You ever see an artist who's just about to blow up, and then suddenly they change their name? It's a bold move, right? Well, that's exactly what happened with the R&B singer the world first knew as Tala Diwata. We're going to dive into her story, because this isn't just about a name change. It's this incredible story about survival, identity, and the power of music to heal. And look, this wasn't some marketing gimmick or a label decision. It was a totally necessary act of survival. This quote just says it all. The shift from Tala Diwata to Liannarie was a profound public story of her reclaiming her own life and her voice after trauma. Okay, so to really get the whole rebirth thing, we've got to go back to the beginning. We need to meet the persona that she created first. Let's take a look at who the world first knew, Tala Diwata. So that name, Tala Diwata, it was so powerful, you know? It's deeply rooted in her Filipino heritage. Tala, that's the goddess of stars, and Diwata is like a nature spirit or a goddess. It created this almost mythical, ethereal identity. And since she's from Batangas City in the Philippines, it was this really beautiful way for her to wrap her art right up in her culture right from the get-go. So her sound, it was really shaped by three major influences. First, you've got Sarah Geronimo, who brought in that deep sense of Filipina cultural pride. Then there's Ravina, where she embraced this really raw vulnerability and the idea that, softness isn't weakness. And of course, Taylor Swift, who taught her how to master that kind of emotionally charged narrative storytelling. So you mix all that together, and what do you get? You get the signature sound of the Tala Diwata era. It's this raw, lo-fi soul just filled with these stories of toxic love and feminine grief. Her music, it felt like reading unsent letters or hearing unspoken truths, where being soft was actually a form of survival. But as beautiful and raw as that music was, there was something else going on. Something much deeper, much more painful, just simmering right under the surface. And that was driving everything. And this one lyric, wow, it's everything. It just shatters the whole idea that she was just singing about a bad breakup. The pain in her music wasn't just heartbreak. It was the heavy weight of trauma that she was carrying around every single day. And this is so important. Her song, I'm Better Off, she doesn't just call it a breakup anthem. She calls it a survival song. It was her telling the story of escaping a physically and emotionally abusive relationship. A truth that, as she said, took her years to be able to share without feeling shame. And that context, well, it just changes everything, doesn't it? When you go through something that devastating, you can't do it alone. You need a rock-solid support system. And for her, that came from this really unique community-first record label. Yeah, this place, 116 Music, it basically became her creative sanctuary. It was founded by Daniel Bates, an independent label with hubs in Dallas and Vegas. But really, it operates more like a creative family. And it's all built on this foundation of absolute trust. And get this, she wasn't just an artist they signed, she was the very first one. And you can really feel the vibe of the whole label in this lyric from a track they all worked on. She wasn't alone in these struggles. The artists at 116 were this community, and they were all grappling with these same themes of betrayal and just how hard it is to trust people. And this is a direct quote from a voicemail she actually left for the label's founder, Daniel Bates. It just perfectly sums up how they work together. It wasn't about contracts in business. It was about honoring each other's stories, their pain, and their vision as something sacred. I mean, that level of trust is so rare. Okay, so you have this foundation of trust, right? And this desperate need to heal. And that's when she began the most important part of her entire journey, a deliberate, powerful act of rebirth. And let's be super clear here, this was not a rebrand. It was a completely necessary act of healing. It was her way of drawing a line in the sand, of reclaiming her own identity, her own birth name after everything she went through. It was a victory she had to fight for. And when you put the two side by side, the transformation is it's crystal clear. Tala Diwata, that was the mythological persona, this protective shield she needed to even begin to process her grief. But Liannarie, which comes from her birth name, Liannarie, well, that's her authentic self. The focus shifted from just processing trauma to survival and reclaiming her own story. And she didn't just, quietly update her social media handles. No way. To make this transition totally official, she created a landmark album that served as both a farewell and an act of gratitude.
That project was a 23-track album called Thank You, Tala. And just think about that title for a second. It's not Goodbye, Tala. It's Thank You. It's this powerful act of honoring the persona that helped get her through the absolute darkest times, while also being this manifesto for the person she was becoming, Liannarie. You can literally trace this evolution right through her music. Her early stuff, like Fading Stars, was all about grief, loss, a fading identity. Then you get to that transitional phase with songs like I'm Better Off that were all about survival and healing. And finally, post-rebirth, as Liannarie, it's pure empowerment and reclamation in tracks like Rewrite the Code.
In this quote, man, it just gets right to the absolute heart of everything. This journey wasn't about erasing the past. It's a statement of this profound self-love, of reverence for the person she had to be just to survive it all. Her struggle wasn't a failure. It was the sacred foundation for her own liberation.
So when you see an artist do something this brave, to claim every single piece of her story, the pain, the breaking, and the healing, it kind of makes you think, right? It leaves us with a pretty powerful question. What parts of your own past, of your own struggles, are you ready to claim as a sacred part of who you are today?